Welcome to the Reality Revolution. Today I got Lawrence Watusi III. If you have not heard of Lawrence, Lawrence has a YouTube channel, The Last Mystery School. He has a podcast, Magickal Mumbles. He is the creative director for Transurfing TV. And I'm a huge fan. I've already had a full interview that didn't get recorded. And so this might end up being even better because we talked about everything from neurolinguistic programming to magic, and we have a lot of very similar interests, and I was super fascinated. So this is going to be probably even more fascinating. And so welcome, Lawrence. How's it going?
Pretty good. Great to see you again.
Yeah. So let's just, for the people that are watching the Reality Revolution, a lot of people obviously are fans of reality transurfing. So I just wanted to get a little bit of your background of how you got into transurfing and how it's affected your life.
Well, I had been working with a lot of the concepts that Vadim Zeland writes about in reality transurfing for a long time. I had different names for them, a lot of things I didn't have names for, and they were just kind of vague ideas and theories in my head. And I was on Amazon one day just looking for something to read, and I saw a comment on some other book. I don't remember the name of the book, but there was a comment and they mentioned reality transurfing. And first of all, the name reality transurfing was itself enough to intrigue me. And something about what they said made me want to check it out. And when I checked it out, my mind was just blown because this guy had written out a whole model for a lot of the things that I had been thinking about. I have like a couple of working models in my head, and there's other models like obviously the big obvious one is law of attraction that people talk about and compare reality transurfing to. And his model was really good because I like his perspective, as it's probably affected by his background as a physicist, but his perspective is really interesting. And it was like he had a lot of vocabulary for things that I didn't have words for before. So it was really cool to think about.
Yeah, that's the thing that I have found so unique about this, is that it really captured a lot of concepts that I was vaguely aware of, but I had not put into words. And that's what I really like about it, is it kind of encapsulates a lot of this, so that we can talk about some of this stuff. Another thing that you're really interested in that we have a commonality is neurolinguistic programming. And also you have an interest in magic with a K, not magic as in magic tricks, but magic with a K. And I really think that there is like a merging point between all three of these, that when work together, that something greater can come out of it. First of all, neurolinguistic programming, if people have followed my podcast, they know that it's something that I'm super fascinated, something I've studied quite a bit. And so I was really excited to hear that you had some background on this too, and you had applied it in your life. So tell me also a little bit about what you've learned about neurolinguistic programming and how that has helped you as well.
Well, that's a big question. Well, neurolinguistic programming, I think, is a really awesome background kind of glue to hold a lot of these things together, a lot of practices, techniques, theories, paradigms, especially practical paradigms, because neurolinguistic programming is a practical science. It's a really good glue to hold things together and to really supercharge whatever practices you're doing with a more scientific, experience-based, neuroscience-based set of rules, practices, presuppositions, and ideas and experiments that you can use to your advantage. Like there's things that, like the swish patterns that you can use to change. Like a lot of people look at things in reality transurfing like importance, let's say. There's a lot of things already in neurolinguistic programming that we already talk about all the time for what you would call reducing importance.
Right. Absolutely. It's almost like neurolinguistic program gives us techniques and specific applications that can help us reduce importance, to disconnect from pendulums, to change our mindset and our attention, redirect our attention. I do think it's a mistake. A lot of people will get into one particular concept and think that's the be all end all. And the thing that I really liked about our last conversation is there's great stuff from all of it, and kind of when we're assimilating all this stuff, I think something greater can come from it. In many ways, I think reality transurfing is kind of like a model that an NLPer would create for a master manifester. Somebody that was, hey, this guy over here is really good at creating and adjusting his own reality. What are the techniques he's using? And that would be a model that an NLPer would have. If that does that make sense? What I'm trying to say?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. That reminds me of something called. Have you heard of DHE?
Design Human Engineering by Bandler, right?
By Bandler, yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting.
That's a lot what reality surfing reminds me of is DHE, and I really love DHE because it's a meta process that takes all the processes of NLP and puts it into a context that's, to me, really fun. Actually, like you can design whatever, you can design a lever in your head, you pull it, and you're more confident. Right. Where you can design a model like reality transurfing, and you can choose to view the universe in a certain paradigm, and those sets of rules, as long as you act on them and act as they're true, the universe reality will respond in a like way.
I had not associated with that, but you're absolutely right. When that book comes to mind, Design Human Engineering is really a perfect example. It's coming at it from a different angle. It's giving you a particular ways to change your thought processes. I've used it to change and reduce things that have happened in my past, to almost re-edit things and memories that I've had in the past, and relationships and that kind of thing. So super fascinating. Now, the third thing that we had talked about that's super fascinating is magic. And the reason I'm fascinated with people, practitioners of magic going back thousands of years, have been studying the same things as reality transurfing and even NLP, because they're studying attention, ways to maximize visualization, ways to maximize energy. All of these things are the same. When people hear the word magic with the K, they think, oh no, that's evil or shady or weird or something's wrong. It's not. They're very similar. So tell me a little bit of your perspective on magic and in this relationship of our conversation.
Sometimes I almost teeter on the edge of just saying that NLP is magic, or that magic is just NLP.
Right.
Although the only thing that keeps me from saying that is the exclusion of spiritual paradigms and like other metaphysical things that NLP doesn't necessarily always talk about. But definitely NLP is like a cornerstone of my personal magical practice, whether it's during like ritual or empty-handed stuff. NLP, just learning it, knowing those concepts has been like a staple of everything else, because knowing how attention works, how responses work, visualization, how all those things have an effect on your physiology and what you perceive, that just supercharges everything that I do. The NLP is like, you could say that it's magic.
Yeah.
It's like, I look at magic as like a mental software.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a meta program in which you can install other applets, let's say, and NLP is like an Adobe suite,
right?
I mean, of applets.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, you had introduced a book when we talked before. I want to bring it up again because the book of Autem is integrating neurolinguistic programming and magic, and it's also talking about pendulums before Vadim Zeland was talking about pendulums. So, first, thanks for the name of the book is the Book of Autem. I had it up here, but it's I just wanted to get your perspective on that and what you had learned from that particular book.
Well, in our last conversation, I did kind of allude to that he mentioned pendulums before, Vadim. I wouldn't necessarily say that's 100% correct. What I really meant was that he introduced an idea that may have been before the time he Vadim wrote the book. I'm not sure, but it was
Right.
definitely before I had, like years before I had read Reality Transurfing or was even aware of it. But he talked about this idea of mimetic entities, the root word being meme.
Right. He's not saying the word pendulum, but the idea behind
Yeah,
it
the idea
is my,
behind it is
my
is
first
really
impression from breezing through it. Yeah.
yeah, it's a really similar idea behind it, but their applications of it are fundamentally different.
Mm-hmm.
Farber, when he talks about mimetic entities, it's really closely parallel with pendulums in that they're thought organisms that live and breathe on human consciousness and spread via human consciousness and occur when groups of humans hold a similar idea.
Right.
But he also connects with that idea with the idea of almost like a servitor.
Mm-hmm.
We had a little brief thing about servitors, in that he actually he even has instructions on how to design a mimetic entity of your own that has whatever traits and values that you want it to have, and how to absorb that that entity's energy into your own.
Right.
Um, and of course, Vadim Zeland's idea of pendulums is he doesn't really look at them as a thought form that you interact with directly or personally, or that you may. He does briefly, because he does say that each person is their own pendulum,
Right.
but he doesn't really talk about doing that. And he just says pendulums are, thought forms that are overall destructive because they pull energy from you
Right.
in this way or that way, and it has adherence, and those things are related to Farber's idea of memes. But also Farber has a whole set. He lists these interesting sets of what he calls the powers of
Mm-hmm.
a tem. And by the way, a tem is
Its
the book.
own servitor, right?
It's its own entity. Yeah,
Right.
the book. It's so meta. It's so awesome. I love how he does this. But
Right.
he uses Atem, the entity Atem, which
Mm-hmm.
now has grown because you know about it,
Right.
um, to explain the whole power and the whole structure of how a mimetic entity works.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gives Atem and names these powers that they have. There's like 8 powers, I think, and a set of I don't know, their attributes, or this is like 8 powers and 7 attributes or 9 attributes, something like that. And you can use these as an idea to both recognize and create your own mimetic entities.
Which is very cool. And as we had mentioned, Vadim Zeland mentions, first of all, in the 78 days of transurfing, to create your own guardian. So we're not talking, if you believe that you can create your own reality, then you can create entities. And he's saying, even if you don't believe it's real, in your mind, it can have an advantage. And so that's where I'm coming at, where there's some advantage in talking about. He does mention an analogy in the book, in the Reality Transurfing, of the egregore, which is talked about in old magic books, which is a literal living entity like Atem that is made from thought. So my question is to you, with your advanced knowledge of NLP and memetics, do you become aware of pendulums? How do you become aware of pendulums taking away or being destructive? Because when I was talking to Bootsy Greenwood yesterday, we did say some pendulums can be good. But when you have a negative pendulum that you know is taking your energy or maybe affecting your reality or pulling you on a different lifeline, do you have any particular techniques that you can share that can help separate from a pendulum? Or move or distance or depower yourself or decouple yourself from a pendulum?
Well, a couple of ideas on that. That's where the NLP comes in, because,
Yeah.
like you said, it doesn't really matter if it's real or not. Even in Farber's instructions on how to create an entity and absorb it, he's using NLP. He specifically uses NLP techniques to achieve a neurological reaction that
Right.
is identical to the result you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that in mind. As far as entities being destructive and how to not be, susceptible to them, first of all, my understanding, and maybe this isn't right, maybe someone can correct me, but my understanding of Vadim's declaration of pendulums as negative is
Mm-hmm.
more like a technical term and not necessarily based on good or bad.
Right.
And that the idea that a pendulum is positive, he doesn't really say that there's a positive pendulum. He just says that all pendulums are destructive because they take energy from you without giving anything back,
Right.
and that there are some pendulums with which you resonate. And if there's something you like doing, you like being part of a sports team, you enjoy going to the sports bar, and you enjoy going to the games and painting your face and being with your family and your friends, that's something you're into.
Mm-hmm.
Then, like he says, you found your pendulum. But that pendulum is still technically destructive. It's still taking energy from you, still making you an adherent. It's still
Right.
making you still have to follow its rules, or else you'll be neutralized.
Right.
But you don't notice it because you like it. You're into that. You're into it.
Mm-hmm.
um so as far as like not being into something, if you're not into it, just don't be into it.
Right.
If it, say, let's take a super obvious example, politics. If you're not into something that a certain political figure or a certain government is doing, then don't give it energy. Don't pay it
Right.
attention. Now, you might say, well, I live here. How do I not pay attention to my own government? You do that by not giving it your attentive energy.
Mm-hmm.
You can abide by the rules of the society and do as you please, as far as you're not hurting yourself or anyone else, and operate within that, while still giving your attentive energy to an idea that you do prefer. So let's say you have a better idea for what the government should be like, then you can live in that government, and you can have, I mean, it depends on, depending, this context obviously will vary depending on
Right.
your country or whatever you're in, but you can put energy with your action toward the pendulum of your choice, or towards whatever idea you want to put forth. But the main idea is that, looking back at Farber again,
Mm-hmm.
the way a pendulum lives and the way a meme lives is by human attention. If it doesn't have human attention, it dies. That's what it
Mm-hmm.
feeds on. That's what it lives in. If it doesn't have human, that's why Latin, they use Latin as an example for a dead language. It's only dead. It's not really dead because I'm talking about it right now. But you see that how
Right.
it's a smaller, like, you can even sense with your intuition in the new sphere. That's a word Farber came up with, the new
Mm-hmm.
sphere. The space. You could say that the new sphere is probably not the space variations, but it's an area where it's like the space where memes exist, where
Mm-hmm.
pendulums and mimetic entities exist. It's like the consciousness network of the earth, the new
Mm-hmm.
sphere. You can even sense intuitively in the new sphere that the language of Latin is a smaller, weaker organism than the language of Japanese or the
Right.
language of English, because it's stronger in your mind. You understand, some Japanese words, a lot of English words.
Right.
Latin is not something you hear about very often, unless people are literally talking about dead languages.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a clue. And there's things that are completely dead, which I can't name because I don't know what they are, because they're
Right.
dead. And
Right.
so that's how you kill a pendulum. You don't talk about it, you don't think about it, you don't call them, you don't text them, you don't look them up, don't stalk them
You
on
ghosted.
Facebook. You ghost.
Right. Well, so I don't think that we're supposed to end up being hermits, though. So we're not supposed to sit in our house and just be hermits to avoid it. We're going to be participating with these pendulums no matter what. And so I think that what you've said is a pretty good recommendation, is just go back to my attention. If I think that I'm having so something I love to talk to somebody that's read a lot about magic. Is there any techniques, practices, rituals, ideas that you've learned from magic in particular that have that you've applied that have given you some power or have been very effective that we can use that we can model and apply to what we're talking about with consciousness and reality creation?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole lot of different bits and pieces. The most prevalent idea that comes to mind as you ask me the question is the concept of sigilization
Mm-hmm.
and gnosis.
Right.
You know about sigils a lot. That's
Right.
for many people, the first thing they learn about, especially in the internet age, about magic is sigils,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically a symbol that's made of letters which represent a desire or an intent that you have.
Right.
And the idea of the sigil is that you have encoded this intention into this symbol, and that the symbol, you charge it using gnosis,
Mm-hmm.
which is a what's the word, transcendental state of mind. That's not the right word, but it'll come
Mm-hmm.
to me. But an altered state via drumming. You could get it by drumming, music, just walking, meditation,
Sexual
just
practices, all kinds of
sexual
different.
practices.
Right.
But it's a transferred state where
Right.
your monkey mind, your regular third dimensional attention is at rest, and you go into theta wave, probably, if I'm getting that right, theta brainwave.
Essentially, right. Just in that meditative lower brainwave state where the mind is
Mhm.
not really active, is in the beta, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. And the idea is that in that state, your subconscious mind becomes much more susceptible to suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
And using the program, I'm a computer guy, so I call them programs.
Mm-hmm.
But using that program you put into the sigil, you can imprint that impression. You can make that impression onto your subconscious mind, and therefore manifest that into the world.
It's almost like an advanced affirmation that's simplified. So, if you had like a paragraph long affirmation, you can put it into a single symbol and it has the same resonance for people that haven't tried it. I mean, I've used sigils on artwork I've used, or it can be something as simple as a symbol, but it is a form of attention redirection in many ways.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good way to put it, a form of attention redirection. And this idea, to answer your question of what kind of power I feel like it's given me, is that this idea of sigilization can be carried on to pretty much anything that you create. It doesn't just have to be a symbol on a piece of paper. It could be a piece of music or a piece of artwork. It could be work that you're doing with people. The idea of getting yourself in a conducive state, in a conductive state, and embedding work with intention.
Right. Something a lot of people that are watching this are not aware that we had a whole other interview. So it's kind of interesting. I'm trying to remember what questions I've asked right now, but something we didn't talk about that I wanted to talk about a little bit more with you was we were talking about psychedelic experiences and how those integrate with magic and reality creation. Something that I'm super fascinated by. And just wanted to know what your experience, what your impression and experiences of that universe is.
Well,
that's the best way to ask the question. You understand what I'm trying to get at? Because I think there's a link with this stuff.
Yeah, that's a big universe.
Yeah.
I've had some experience, some experiments with psychedelics. Just, you know, first of all, first off, as a kid, just wanting to experiment and then doing it more
Right.
intentionally. Um, there's a lot. There's a lot there. That's
Right.
a huge ball of yarn that can
Right.
unravel and
So
unravel.
do you think that there, let me think of the best way. I can only talk about my own personal experiences with psychedelics made me become aware of what I believe is magic, or if the scientist part of my mind, a part of the universe that I cannot necessarily put in scientific terms, that may be interacting and flowing with what we're talking about when we're creating reality with the mirror universe, with the alternative space. And so sometimes I'll sit back and reflect about the alternative space, about these concepts, and I look back on my psychedelic experiences, and it seems like the veil was lifted. Here's a better question: do you think that we are seeing the mirror reality when we're in those psychedelic experiences?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by mirror reality.
Right. As discussed in like Tufti or in Vadim Zeland, he's saying that the universe, there's a mirror that we're interacting with. In the mirror is the alternative space, and the mirror reflects back upon us. And a lot of times, when you read about people's ayahuasca experiences, it seems like it's a deep inner reflection of their own subconscious psyche that's occurring, and that it's not really something that's happening on the outside world, but we're delving deeper into the. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at?
I maybe. I haven't had experience with ayahuasca specifically, but I've
Right.
had experiences with things like with LSD, for example. I would say I often say to people when we get to talking about it that LSD is like a scientist and psilocybin is like a shaman,
Right.
because they have somewhat similar effects, but they have a different way of going about how they affect your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And with something like LSD, I could say that I've had experiences that seemed like I had a vastly different perspective on reality, about reality, due to the changes that were happening in my
Mm-hmm.
brain, the shifts in perspective that I had, both in like in scope.
Mm-hmm.
Like it seemed like the scope that of ideas that my mind was grasping at were much wider.
Right.
And so I was able to see what felt like a logical network, a wide logical network of a lot of different ideas
Right.
that previously weren't necessarily related, and all of a sudden were related. And so things like synchronicities start popping up,
Mm-hmm.
and I looking back in the past and seeing the connection of events in my life, and seeing them in a different context, and um, perhaps sometimes seeing a different meaning behind them. And I've often had experiences that made me question whether or not we were in some kind of all kinds of different ideas that might arise, like whether we're in a software simulation.
Simulation.
um i've had like I've had like experiences, like DMT experiences, where I've woken up in what looked like a laboratory,
Mm-hmm.
like and like it was like a momentary lapse in a program, and it was like my console was awake, and I suddenly became aware of the room where my real body was.
Wow. That's amazing. Right.
And it was like, oh, okay, the program glitched for a second. Okay, I can tell you this story. I'll just tell you this
Yeah.
this
Yeah. I want. So. Yeah.
Okay, so it'll be a quick story.
No. No. It's all
So
good. I want to hear it for sure.
I don't have a lot of memory of everything up to this point. This is the moment that stuck with me from this particular experience. It was a sensation similar to opening my eyes. I say that because I don't necessarily feel like I had eyelids, but like it was like opening my eyes. It was like something turning on.
Wow.
And I was laying down, so I guess maybe I had a body, and it was like I was horizontal, and I was in like this. It was like a casket, like a not a dead person casket, but like a science table pod.
Like the pod in Avatar, kind of.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, like the pod in Avatar.
Right.
Yeah, it's just like the pod in Avatar.
Right.
But it was, and I woke up and I turned my head, and there was someone standing there, and they were, at first they weren't looking at me. They were like busy doing something, and I opened my eyes, and as soon as I opened my eyes, it turned and looked at me, and it kind of had a sense of humor. It was like it knew something was wrong, but it had a sense of humor about it. It's like, oh, hello, you're not supposed to be awake. It's like, oh, you need to go back to sleep. What do you think, though? This is pretty crazy, huh? He was like talking to me like I would talk to my cat, like, hey, what are you doing over there, cat?
Wow.
He was like, okay, dear.
Right.
I don't know what exactly happened. Maybe it turned a dial, or maybe it just, maybe just the drug just wore off.
Right.
But I left. I went back to sleep, and I flew back to
Right.
back to here.
A lot of people have had similar situations. Of course, they people have commonality in witnessing certain entities, under these experiences. But I keep on thinking while you're saying that, we were introduced to this concept in Tufti of the plate, which is something coming from the back of our head that controls our reality. And it very literally could have been what was plugged into you while you're sitting in that pod. Or at least a memory of it. What you could have been experiencing, who knows, but it could have been a memory, a reincarnated memory, like way in the past, your soul had been through this experience, right? Or it could have been something that's happening in the moment, or as some people will theorize, that it's all in the present moment. And, but
well, we're on the subject of psychedelics. While you were saying that, I had this other memory that came up on an LSD experience where I really felt a cord going back from my head and ending in my reality in a weird way. It was like a set of lenses, which was my face, my five senses, like, and it was like I suddenly became aware of. I drew it. I'm looking for this drawing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll find it.
No, it's cool. It's interesting because the concept of the plate, when we first started to discuss it amongst ourselves, may have first been talked about by Carlos Castaneda, and people may not totally agree with Castaneda, but the dude was into psychedelics. He's talking about peyote and different things. So I'm saying, okay, now that's what I was trying to get. There's a link. There's something. Maybe reality transurfing is a level of awakening that's similar to psychedelics. Terence McKenna in I don't know which book, states that when humans many years ago came out onto the plains and they didn't have any food to eat because they had left the area they were at, and they found some mushrooms and started taking that, and that was when we started to create language and started to write and create written symbols and communicate. And so there was a transformation, a huge singularity that occurred, and that was one of the first singularities that occurred. And when I created the concept of the podcast for Reality Revolution, it was because of an innate feeling that we're going through another kind of revolution, a reality revolution. Transurfing to me is part of this, that we're all awakening to these powers of our mind and the intricate forces of it. And I think it's uniquely involved with psychedelics and what we're talking about. So that's what came to mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you probably draw that connection, and I draw that connection as well, because the psychedelics have the interesting effect of causing. It's interesting that a lot of different people can take a psychedelic and they'll all have a completely different experience.
Completely different, right?
A lot of commonalities still occur and a lot of patterns occur. That's why if you go to certain festivals, it's always the same sorts of things you like, artwork and things you see, and there's certain certain sounds that start to resonate with you.
Right.
um I do think there's a connection between the, if you were to say that there's a reality revolution happening, then I would say that there's a psychedelic connection to that. Just
Yeah.
like the experience, the psychedelic experience is like an accelerated learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a high volume download of information.
Mm-hmm. I used to describe it as, it's like we have glasses on our brain and we can suddenly see what's been kind of blurry.
I used to say that it's like going from your normal life is N64, and psychedelics is like playing like PS4.
Right. That's another good analogy.
It's kind of
Makes
stupid.
sense. So before we go down that rabbit hole too far, let's pull it back a little bit. So another thing that really struck me when our last conversation, you have you're very similar to me, big time into Tim Ferriss and a lot of these self-help books. And so we had kind of talked about different routines and things that had worked, and I was pretty fascinated. You have a very interesting morning routine that you've developed over time. It doesn't have to be every time, but I wanted to get your morning routine. I ask all my guests. I'm always fascinated by, especially people that are interested in personal development, and what kind of morning routine you've had evolve over time. If you could share that with the Reality Revolution.
Yeah, over time I have developed a morning routine. Just so I'll wake up around 4 or 5 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and I immediately roll over and write in my journal, and I'll start with the dream journal and record whatever dreams I may have. If I didn't have any, I'll just write, can't remember, no dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll do like a 5-minute reading, a la Tim Ferriss, kind of got it from him. Like
Mm-hmm.
I used to use like a different guy's method of just writing a whole 2 pages. And that was a really good practice, actually. Just the practice of waking up and writing every morning and doing a brain dump is really, really made a difference in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just in like focus, stress levels, it's crazy. Like I don't even remember what I wrote down the whole day, but just the act of waking up and doing that. Like one time there was a series of mornings where I wrote this whole like story.
Mm-hmm.
Just every morning I woke up and wrote a different part of the story. I don't know the whole story. I don't even know the story. It's in the book. I could
Right.
read it. I can go back and read it, but it's there. It's just like that creative energy getting out. So I like to do that, and I started doing Tim Ferriss's thing where he calls it a 5-minute journal. You just write for
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes, just whatever. So I started doing that. So I wake up, do a 5-minute journal, dream journal, meditate for 15 minutes, and I'll just do 3 ohms, a home
Mm-hmm.
3 times, and kind of set I set up kind of a mental space by doing that. Like NLP concept, changing state. I
Mm-hmm.
do that to change state real quick. Meditate for 15 minutes, another 3 ohms, and I will work out. My doctor told me that I should eat first now, so I guess,
Mm-hmm.
but up till like this morning, I'll work out. I'll go for a jog and or lift some weights, and then I'll have a shower. And I forgot to mention this last time.
Mm-hmm.
Before I get in the shower, I do a mirror gazing technique that I got from, it might have been Think and Grow Rich. It was one of the
I
old
think
ones.
or it's Magic of Believing with Claude Bristow, or
Yeah,
Think and Grow
one of those
Rich. Yeah.
old, yeah, one of those
Yeah.
old. I do mirror gazing. I just,
Mm-hmm.
look at myself and do the whole thing that he describes. And I say affirmations. I do 10 overall life affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
And then I hop in the shower, and I get out, get dressed, and I make breakfast. And I have a nice breakfast, make sure it's, healthy. I'm trying to eat more. I'm trying to gain some weight. So I'm trying to like eat even more now. And I'll start work. And when I start work, I usually like to, depending on what day it is. So I have a mind map that is a map of drawing from basically my heart space to all the goals that I want for my life, that all the experiences that I do, like subtractively to things that are just like bothering me, basically, that I haven't done yet. And I have a mind map of all those things, and I address all those. And every morning I have a to-do list with items that are actionable tasks related to those goals, as well as like just work stuff, like client work and to-do stuff. Um, and I overview those, and that gives me a feeling like, okay, I'm assuming, because I'm kind of, I'm acting out a target slide, that these now, as a function of my ultimate target slide, are finished.
Right.
And I know specifically what's finished. So that gives me a feeling of, all right, cool, I'm good. Like, today's cool. And that gives me just, a little boost of confidence, little dopamine shot. And from there, I organize what tasks are urgent, what need to be done today. Most of it's usually already set, because I do this at the beginning of the week. And I'll sit down and outline what I'm going to do. I'll block out hours on a Google Calendar of work tasks, and that's pretty much the routine. From there on, it's whatever happens.
And like you said, you don't necessarily get the whole 8 hours. You break it up sometimes and take little naps
Of
throughout
sleep.
the day.
Yeah. I'll probably get like 4 5 hours of sleep maybe at night, and then I'll wake up, I'll do some work, and take a nap during the day.
Which is interesting, because there, I had read a study that said you break down your sleep in 90-minute increments, not necessarily in the full 8 hours. And if you're getting the full whatever number of hours that is in 90-minute increments, so you don't find yourself tired, even though that 5 hour, because of the way that you adjust your sleep schedule then, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel tired sometimes.
Right.
I feel tired like at the end of the day, I guess.
Right.
At the end of, like, a long day, I'll be tired, but you get some rest, and it's been working pretty well. It's not that part of it isn't really by design. Like, if it was my choice, I'd sleep a full 8 hours, just because I feel like it'd be nice to just lay down and sleep a full 8 hours. But for some reason, I seem to be waking up at 3, 4, and 5 in the morning lately.
Very cool. And a question I asked last time: have you ever experienced anything supernatural? I ask every guest, and sometimes it's a hard question to answer, because life is supernatural in many ways, like on a daily basis. But anything that you can share with us?
Every day is supernatural.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but
Coincidences,
yeah, I've
synchronicities,
experienced
weird manifestations.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced some things. Okay, I have a fun one.
Yeah.
So I mentioned the mirror affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
So I read this book, and I decided to do, and this was, I think, probably 2016. Yeah, this was 2016, because I
Right.
remember something funny. I decided, it was almost like a New Year's resolution, that I was going to do this mirror affirmation, stare into the mirror,
Mm-hmm.
gaze into my eyes. And I guess specifically gazed into my left eye, because I went to Lightning in a Bottle and went to this couples thing, and they told us specifically look into the left eye when we're like looking into each other's eyes. So I was looking
Okay.
into my left eye, and commanding myself to be, what the gaze of the person I want to be,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Just have that energy that I want. And stupid. I said to myself, I am a world traveling millionaire. I
Right.
am a world traveling millionaire. I said that 10 times. I did that every single day, every morning. And at the time, this guy never sees this. At the time, I was working on Fiverr.com. I was doing like Photoshop work,
Mm-hmm.
like some video work on Fiverr. And I was hit up out of the blue by this artist
Mm-hmm.
who I had never heard of, but all out of nowhere, he sent me $100 order to make something, literally anything. Like he like just told me like the brief was very wide. Like he literally just I'll accept whatever you send me. Just send me like a graphic. So I wanted to do a good job still, of course. So I made like this cool 3 graphic, and he ended up sending me a series of like 11 or 12 of those, and like paying me like upwards of like $1,300 for these like 3D graphics. And right at the like end of this, my friend was like, "Hey man," he was going to Japan to like to meet up some people. He's like, "Hey man, you wanted to go to Japan?" And I was like, yeah. Oh, okay. Hold up.
Right.
This is a crazier. There's another part to this that will really make it supernatural. This is even better.
Right.
So fuck. This is like a whole timeline. So my friend hit me up and said, "You want to go to Japan?" And the instant he hit me up, the vision of me sitting on a bench in Tokyo with my skateboard saying Om came to mind. And this was my own kind of technique. This is full circle, man.
Mm-hmm.
My own technique that I had been developing for years that came off of a series of experiments, in some cases involving psychedelics, whereby I would set up future memory nodes in which I would be in a certain place at a certain in under certain conditions. And one of those memory nodes, I was sitting in Tokyo with my skateboard at a certain weather in a certain place that looked a certain way, going Om. And we talked about Om. Om is a key factor. I'm gonna have to explain the whole technique later because it's the whole thing, but it's a key point. It's a key factor in the technique. Actually, I do have a video on, I think, like Sunny's group about this, but basically I use Om and the vibration to build what later I would learn to call a target slide. A series of target slides that are interconnected, and every single time I would reach one of those target slides, I would act it out full force. I had another one before that where I got my first car. So as soon as I got the car, I held my girlfriend's hand and said, "Hey, hold on, babe. This is gonna be really weird for a second, but just humor me for a second, okay?"
Right.
And I stared at the back of my car like I intended to, maybe 6 to 9 months earlier.
Right.
So every time you do it, every time I did it, it reaffirmed that belief. Every time I got to a node, it was like, "Yep, this works." Om, yes, this works. And so I would make them more and more fantastic. So I was like, "Let's go to fucking Tokyo," because I want to go to Tokyo. And so my friend said, "You want to go to Japan? You want to go to Tokyo?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm getting on the plane. Let's go." And
brought your skateboard.
Yeah, no, I didn't bring my skateboard. I had to buy one.
Right.
But yeah, long story short, I got lost in Tokyo. Almost felt like I was going to die of thirst and starvation. Bought a skateboard, found the bench, did the Om. There it was. I was there. It came true. And it was interesting to me that like it was like a whole series of intentional things. It could have been this technique or that technique. It didn't matter which technique it was.
Right.
It was that belief was the key component, the tool. So later on, I was somehow, in doing that, I was somehow led to read this book, which somehow, through my own figuring out, had the idea to do this practice, this technique every morning of doing the mirror affirmations, which somehow led to me being a not a millionaire,
Right.
and not
That's
traveling
still
the
coming,
whole.
right?
But here's the thing, yeah, I still want to do that. I don't care about being a millionaire anymore. But like, and the funny thing is, like, I just went to Tokyo with $1,000. I didn't travel the world with $1 million, but that's the same. That was like they say, like, it's not necessarily going to be exactly what your mind thinks of. It's going to be something of the energy that you're looking for. And so that I had the energy of traveling the world with money that I earned
Mm-hmm.
through having a good time, and through like effortless means,
Mm-hmm.
and fulfilling that. And afterwards, I by the end of it, I was like, dude, if I'm sick of Tokyo, I want to go back home.
Right. Well, it's just a great reminder. If you have something that manifests, sometimes that word's overused, sometimes that you have something that happens that you visualized before, you should take a moment and do something so that you can mark it, like you just said, the Om or something. And I've thought about that. Sometimes we have things that manifest and we just kind of like let it go. But what you did is perfect. It's like you're communicating back to yourself in the past. It's almost like you're creating a link through that vibration, and the Om itself creates. So I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to create some kind of way to vibrate in certain manifestations when they occur as a reminder.
Yeah, it's really
So
cool. The Om itself holds the vibration of the manifestation, and it gives you an actual physical vibration in your body for you to actually crystallize into.
right. So I asked you about this before, but what is your perspective on parallel realities? And do you think they exist? And can we travel through them?
I think it depends on whatever camp you come from and whatever paradigm you follow. I will say that a model of parallel realities can be useful.
Yes, as a way of accepting things that are outside of your belief zone. I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Have
a
you
great
ever
mental model.
experienced anything that made you think that you had traveled to a parallel reality?
Yeah, actually, I didn't answer this as well last time, but now that I've talked about that last technique and experience I've had other nodes
Mm-hmm.
like that I've set up and it manifested. I have other nodes that I've set up and actually abandoned because I decided I didn't want them anymore. And I've actually thought of the idea that I'm just transferring into a parallel reality where these exist, because I could have chosen not to do it. Like the thing with Japan, I could have just chosen not made that choice to do that, and something else would have occurred. So
Right.
A parallel reality is useful to a mental model to imagine that there is another reality, another series of cause and effects or lifeline that exist that exists, that could have occurred, or that even still exists and is occurring simultaneously right now.
Right.
I don't know, like at the moment, why that's useful, but
No,
people
I
do.
think that you put it into words better than I could. I think that what I'm starting to get at is that, I was talking to a physicist the other day who was making fun of reality creates the whole community talking about parallel realities, how, it's ridiculous and we don't understand what I'm talking about. And you should keep your mouth shut because you don't understand about parallel realities. But it is effective as a mental model, going back to design human engineering and NLP as a model of thinking, because the hardest thing for people to do sometimes is get past that idea. I don't believe that this is possible. But if you do believe or accept the idea of a possibility of a parallel reality or an information field that carries the information of parallel reality, then suddenly you can say, well, yeah, it is possible because there's some universe where that happened. And I want to tap into that lifeline and let that occur. So I think that you helped define that for me, and I appreciate that. So,
And I would say if someone is bent on the logical point of view, then I would say, well, look at the whole course of human history and the amazing feats that a human being is capable of, and the amazing rate an amount of change that a human being is capable of going through, and what a human being is capable of accomplishing.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing the fact of that, you just look at human history, knowing that it's very likely that you, as a fellow human being, should be capable of just as much change, just as much as accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of a parallel reality, and I mean, in terms of practical usage for personal development, the idea that a parallel reality where you exist as exactly what and where you want to be is useful, because you have that option to imagine a possible stream of cause and effect to get there,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the option to believe that it is possible.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that it exists in a parallel reality is just, it gives your brain something to chew on, to visualize a place where you can get to.
Now, outside of parallel realities, do you believe there are other dimensions? And, you know, going back to psychedelics, I think that was the first time that I personally had felt, you know, I don't think I'm in my own dimension right now. And maybe that, you know, you never know because it's all subjective. Do you believe there are other dimensions, not just realities for your own timeline, but other dimensions?
I think there's a good chance there is.
Right.
I don't know for sure, but I think there's a good chance that there are dimensions outside of human perception. Just looking at the narrow width of the electromagnetic spectrum of visible light,
Mm-hmm.
that alone, just looking at that is like, okay, well, what could be existing outside of the human range of perception?
Right. What do you think happens? And of course, there is no right answer. And I didn't ask this last time. What do you think happens when we die? Are we moving to another dimension? Do we just die? What is your own impression through your own subjective experience in your life up to this point as to what happens?
I have no idea, man.
Well, that's a great answer. Yeah. And that sometimes is the best answer, right?
I don't even know. I have no idea. Maybe I feel like nothingness wouldn't be an option just logically. And this
Right.
is after, 10 seconds of thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
that nothingness couldn't work. Your energy would have to go somewhere. It'd have to dissipate, at least. I don't know if you'd still be conscious of a place where you'd be going, but it's impossible to imagine where your consciousness would go,
Right.
if it just disappeared.
Right. Well, it's interesting to speculate about. So a couple other questions I always ask that are kind of outside of all this. Do you have a favorite book that you recommend?
Favorite
We
book
talked about the Book of Atem, but anything similar?
other than Harry Potter,
Right.
I like Pragmatic Thinking and Learning
Mm-hmm.
by Andy Hunt. That's a really good one. Talks about the brain and how thinking and learning works. It's written by a software developer, and I believe it's written for software developers, but it's surprisingly brain and mind centric. And he only mentioned software like in problem solving examples, but it's really about the mind, about how you think, how you learn, and how to accelerate your learning by taking advantage of the biology of the brain. And I really love this term he coined, wetware, the software of the mind, and how to upgrade it, maintain it, keep it clean,
Mm-hmm.
keep it running quickly. And I really love his interpretation of the brain hemispheres. And he talks about how the model of the left and the right brain aren't really accurate, and how the brain always operates with both hemispheres of the brain. It's not just like one analytical side working and then one creative side working there. He talks about how to engage both sides simultaneously, and how it's more like they operate in different modes. There's an L mode and an R mode, and you're in L mode when you're in focus and you're practicing and you're building skills and you're downloading information, you're reading, studying, practicing, whatever. And then he touches on the importance of rest in the R mode, because that's where neural connections are actually built. When you're sleeping, when you're having a walk, when you're relaxing, eating, taking a shower. That's why you get so many all your genius ideas come to you in the shower, or while you're having a walk, or when you're just like doing something else. You never get your genius ideas when you're just like trying to come up with them. It never happens, you know. So that's because of the R mode of the brain, and he talks about the biology of that. And it's really interesting.
Yeah, you had mentioned that last time, and I can't wait to read that book, because the more I had thought about it since our last conversation, we're not left or right brained, but it is like a mode in a computer, like you're moving to a different hard drive or a different program. And so I can't wait to read that. So one other question: do you have a favorite movie that you'd recommend for the reality revolution? Not necessarily favorite, but a movie that that I might not have heard of, or something like that.
Yeah, it's hard to think of a favorite movie, but when I try to think of movies, I don't know why this movie always comes up in my mind. It's not even like a really good movie, but
sometimes those are the best, right?
yeah, but it's really interesting. Like when I first saw it, I geeked out. It's called Immortal. It's from Belgium, I think, and it came out in 2004, I think. And it's about an Egyptian god. I think it's Thoth. He has a bird head. He comes out of a this just buff dude with a bird head. He comes out of a pyramid, a Great Pyramid of Giza, which is floating above a city. This is a sci-fi film,
right?
And the pyramid is apparently a spaceship, and I guess this is in a setting where some years ago the pyramid revealed itself as a spaceship, and it's just floating there. And this is like in a futuristic city where people are like part robot, and there's like all this scientific sci-fi-esque political unrest, and there's like a revolutionary guy who gets possessed by this Egyptian god, and there's this girl who's like another life form for another like dimension, and she's some kind of chosen one, and it's a really interesting story. It's really
oh my god, it sounds awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're into like just that kind of thing. I actually saw it. I got the movie from seeing the visuals from it in like a trippy like conspiracy movie on YouTube or something.
Okay.
And they just used the visuals from it. And I was like, whoa, that looks gnarly. What's that movie?
Very cool. No, that's awesome. I plan on watching that right away. So no, I think our interview ended up being better than it was last time. Sometimes when things don't work out, it's to our advantage. And I think it was in this particular case. So I learned a lot. So everybody check out Lawrence's YouTube channel, The Last Mystery School. He's got some great videos on the Kabbalion, and I know you're going to come out with some new stuff. You got podcast Magickal Mumbles and Transurfing TV. He is the creative director, which is coming out with great content all the time. It's been a true pleasure. I really thank you for being so gracious with your time, and I learned a lot, man. Thanks you so much. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, man. We got to do
let's do it again.
On my podcast.
For sure. Anytime. Just let me know.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me, man.